Let's go live to Canberra now. Sky News Political Editor Andrew Clennell. Andrew, I'm seeing you more than my kids at the moment. This is after 5 hours on the telly on Saturday night. Great to see you once again. You've stayed in Canberra, so you backed up on Sunday agenda. Well done. Now, it's going to be a very good big week there in Parliament. What are you expecting? This is kind of where the battle lines are drawn and, you know, Sussan big job ahead of her. And Anthony Albanese, I've got to say, looking pretty relaxed on the way to work this morning, and with that majority, why not?
Well, I mean, isn't it disappointing we don't get a question time till Wednesday? I'm used to one day of ceremony. I'm not sure why we've got two this week, but that's when the rubber hits the road in terms of this parliament, I think, is Wednesday question time. And the pressure's on Sussan Ley more than Anthony Albanese, let's face it, to see how she goes. I do think it is a bit of an advantage, though, to be going in with a female leader at this point of the cycle at least. Now it's up to Sussan Ley if she can perform well enough to stay there, but it changes the dynamic. And it might mean in question time, rather than going full barrel against, say, an Angus Taylor, who was Shadow Treasurer when they had a bunch of what turned out to be disastrous policies, they'll have to recalibrate and maybe focus on Ted O'Brien, the Shadow Treasurer, a bit more. Like, they'll have a few goes at Sussan Ley, but they won't want to overdo it, Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers. So I think from Anthony Albanese's point of view, Laura, he doesn't underestimate any opponent. And Sussan Ley, she started off okay. She had an interesting 60 Minutes profile last night, and she used a line there that Anthony Albanese has often used, which is, I've been underestimated all my life. And I think that's very true. But what the opposition strategy will be, they've laid out there, and it seems fair enough, because there are areas where the government has weakness at the moment. It's whether or not in a question time when it's 90-odd to 40-odd, you can exploit that at all or get any chinks in the armour. And they are the fact that they do appear to want to raise taxes, the fact we have weak economic growth, and the fact that while Anthony Albanese's done well with the China relationship, he could do better with the US relationship. All of these things Shadow Treasurer Ted O'Brien talked about on the program yesterday.
Yeah, look, I think that's really interesting as well, and how Sussan Ley actually pivots and changes her persona. Because I think in previous question times in Parliament, you know, it is a bit of a theatre, or not a bit, it is a theatre for political debate. And I think Sussan Ley has played, you know, a different role in the past. Statement of the obvious, I know, but she has been a bit of a, one of a better term, head kicker. You could say sometimes there's been a bit of overreach for the sake of debate. When you're leader, I don't think you can do that. You've got to be more statesperson-like, and whether she does pivot, I think she's shown that she has been, but who then takes on those other roles that you do need in opposition? Because it's a dirty job, let's face it.
Yeah, it is, and I'm not sure Ted O'Brien's got the presence there, but no doubt they'll find someone to take on that bomb thrower role, Laura. That's for sure. Here was Ted O'Brien on the program yesterday, by the way, talking about the things that they're going to attack the government on.
I think he was particularly weak on issues of security, and by spending 6 days there, not going to Japan, not going to South Korea, I think it has accentuated the problem we have with an imbalanced foreign policy. Well, I think it's clear the government wants new taxes, and I think that's one of the things we have to prosecute over this first sitting of the Parliament. Where are these secret taxes? We've seen it through the leaked Treasury report last week.
From a legislative point of view, we know, Laura, what the government's going to look at: legislating penalty rates, getting this HEX debt 20% wiped off. The opposition signalled they're not going to stand in the way of that legislation. And, of course, this horrible Joshua Brown case in Victoria, the childcare case. They need to get cracking on reforms there. They're going to introduce legislation to withhold funding. Now, Attorney General Michelle Rowland on the program yesterday indicating that she's pressing full steam ahead as well with what many of us might be surprised hasn't occurred before, which is a national working with children check system, which she pointed out here was a 2015 Child Sex Abuse Royal Commission recommendation.
This is something we are actively doing now. This is actually the first item on the agenda for my first Standing Council of Attorneys General, which I chair, in a couple of weeks. This was actually a recommendation coming out of a 2015 series of responses on the Royal Commission into child sexual abuse. We're now in 2025. What is important here is that we have action. The federal government has not been idle. We have been undertaking work to ensure that we do have some mechanisms that are in place.
Andrew, what's coming up on Politics Now today?
First show, 4 p.m. I've got Andrew Charlton, Cabinet Secretary. That's
Excellent.
a position which has traditionally been a consigliere to a Prime Minister. Bill Heffernan used to do it for John Howard, for example. Peter Cretland did it for Tony Abbott. So he's got an interesting role, an interesting promotion, Andrew Charlton. He's seen as a future PM, and he's also Assistant Minister for Science, and there he's going to take an interest in the artificial intelligence space, the Prime Minister told us when he appointed his ministry. So tune in at 4 p.m. for that, Laura.
Yeah, that's really good. And he's full bottle when it comes to AI as well, and essentially where the legislation or the restrictions around AI should start and stop. I think that's an important debate where all that goes, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that is a big test for our workforce. When we talk about this productivity roundtable and how life's going to be for employees going forward, that is going to be a massive part of things that in the next 2 or 3 years is going to transform the way all of us do things. Hopefully they'll still want heads on television, Laura.
Yeah, real ones. I hope so. Thanks so
real
much.
ones.
Even tired ones. We'll see you soon.